Hello and welcome. Tonight, presidential aspirants continue to crisscross different locations seeking support ahead of 2023. Tinubu meets supporters in Lagos, Kwankwaso and Ayim in Abuja for consultations. Agony of a family in Ebonyi State seeking justice over the murder of their 35-year-old daughter allegedly killed in the struggle for inheritance. Our special focus tonight is on climate change impact on agriculture and how the farmers are adjusting to prevailing weather conditions. And Ukraine authorities count deaths following intense Russian shelling across the country.
And on business news tonight, British multinational bank and financial services company Standard Chartered plans to fully shut down its operations in 7 African and Middle Eastern countries.
On sports news tonight, Sadio Mane scored twice as Liverpool edged title rivals Manchester City 3-2 to reach the final of the FA Cup.
It's a beehive of political activities as political aspirants engage their supporters in further campaigns and consultations. In Abuja today, the presidential aspirant of the People's Democratic Party, Senator Ayim Pius Ayim, asked members not to dump the party for any reason ahead of the 2023 general elections. Senator Ayim made the appeal at a meeting with former PDP members of the National Working Committee, describing the movement of some members from the party in 2015 as a mistake.
I want to say that in restoring Nigeria on the path of growth, we have to sharpen a new foundation, or at least return to where we stopped in 2015. Let nobody confuse you. Let nobody mislead you. We were misled in 2015. We were confused in 2015. And that is why we are here. We now have opportunity to reinvent ourselves. The mistake we must not make is the mistake that was made in 2015. In 2015, some of us in PDP, and that is the mistake I want to plead with you tonight not to make. Some of us in PDP simply decided to pull out of PDP and bring that government down. And we were plunged into darkness. And that is why we are here. If we have to rescue the country, we have to reinvent ourselves as a party. And when we set ourselves on these paths, then we will be able to lift our country to a pedestal that will secure the buy-in of everybody and the commitment of everybody to continue to build our nation.
As the race for the presidential election intensifies, the former governor of Kano State, Senator Kwankwaso, says the election will not be about the popularity of a political party, but a time to separate those who are happy with the state of affairs from those who truly want change. According to him, there are millions of Nigerians who are already fed up with the current system and are counting down to election day to vote in a new political party. Senator Kwankwaso formerly left the People's Democratic Party last month to join the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, on whose platform he intends to declare his intention to contest the 2023 presidential election.
We have so many Nigerians, those in PDP, those in APC, those in other parties, and people with no party at all. People are not happy with what is happening. And the election of 2023 will be between those who are happy with what has happened and those who want change. What we are saying is we are not satisfied, we are not happy with the status quo. We want to change it. And I can assure you, even among you, the pressmen and women in this country or in this Abuja, if you put a polling booth now between those who are happy with the system and those who are not happy with the system, I can assure you our own side will take 10 times more than the other side, because the system is not working. Everybody knows it. But you see, Nigerians have got their own way of doing things. Despite all what is happening, many people are quiet because they are just counting. They are counting in years before. Now they are beginning to count in months before election. 9 months from now, election would have been completed, and government in waiting would have been there in place. And that's what Nigerians, especially the young men and women, are yearning for.
So another presidential aspirant this time is Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu from the All Progressive Congress, who gets the support of some Southwest youth. The youths who gather in Lagos at Onikon Stadium assure the APC chieftain of their support in winning the presidential ticket. The former Lagos State governor asked them to be actively involved in the forthcoming general elections and produce the next president of the country.
Ahead of the 2023 presidential election, thousands of youths from the southwest converged on the Mobolaji Johnson area, Onikon Stadium, Lagos, drumming up support for the presidential aspiration of former Lagos Governor Bola Tinubu. The Solidarity Rally also had in attendance prominent politicians from the APC Southwest, including Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and the presidential hopeful himself, Bola Tinubu.
APC of the greatest, of the greatest, of the greatest, Bo. Nigeria, Tinubu.
Youth leaders take turn to endorse the presidential hopeful.
We young House of Assembly members from the Southwest, we are with you, Ashiwaju, and we can assure you that you'll be the next president by the grace of God.
Only Ashiwaju has the power to join Nigeria. Only him has the power to unite Nigeria.
The Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, charged the youth to vote for Tinubu at the APC primary elections.
I want to assure you that this is the man that will ensure that the youth stands beside him, that the youth have a place in his government.
The APC presidential aspirants asked the youth to change the story of Nigeria for good by voting in the right candidate.
I want to be president for you. Drive me there. Commit yourself. Enough of excuses. Enough of bitterness, enough of disunity. All we have to do is be a united Nigeria of Africa.
As political parties gear up for the 2023 general elections, party primaries will determine who becomes the presidential candidate.
In southeast Abia State, a group of supporters drawn from the 17 local government areas are drumming up support for the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo's presidential bid. Members of the group from diverse professional backgrounds are galvanizing resources towards the emergence of Professor Osinbajo as the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, APC. They believe the Vice President is the best man for the job, owing to his detribalized, intellectual and informed approach to governance.
The purpose of this media briefing, therefore, is to call on all and sundry to join us in the auspicious quest aimed at seeing to the emergency of Professor Yemi Osinbajo as the next president of Nigeria come 29th May 2023. We are more than assured, based on records, that he is more prepared than every other presidential aspirant and ready to take over the mantle of leadership of this great nation, Nigeria. Our country is at a crucial stage of our national development. It requires national experience, capacity and tested effectiveness to further steer the ship in 2023 going forward. As the acting president at some point in the life of this administration, Professor Yemi Osinbajo demonstrated effectiveness and practical application of firm leadership, which all Nigerians acknowledge. Someone who is already familiar and is informed about the right application of policies for improved relevant economic indices is Professor Yemi Osinbajo. We, fans of Osinbajo Abia State Chapter, are committing resources and deploying human capital to achieve this objective.
Now, one of the issues those jostling for the office of president will have to deal with if they win is security. Kaduna State, northwest Nigeria, has been in the spotlight, but for the wrong reasons. Despite having multiple military formations and training grounds, and should clearly be taken as a fortress, it has become a playground for bandits, criminals, and terrorists. In this next report, our correspondent Victor Matthias examines why the attention is on Kaduna and the possibility of deploying technology in nipping this scourge in the bud.
Insecurity in northwest Nigeria remains a litmus test yet to be passed by the federal government, as pockets of bandits have carried out attacks leading to loss of lives and property, including kidnapping, castle rustling, and brazen attacks on military formations. In a bid to stem the tide, President Muhammadu Buhari approved the formation of Operation Harbin Kunama 3, in addition to shutting down telecommunication services in some states, yet to no avail. Kaduna State, however, has been in the eye of the storm recently, recording multiple attacks by the bandits despite being the de facto headquarters of Nigeria's security architecture, recording 1,192 deaths and 3,348 people kidnapped in the year 2021, including an attack on the Nigerian Defense Academy. 2022 has also recorded multiple attacks, leaving in its trail deaths and kidnappings, with the recent being the brazen attack on Kaduna Airport, the Abuja-Kaduna rail line twice, and the attack on the military base in Birnin-Gwari that led to the death of 11 soldiers, amongst many others.
It's a convenient state for them due to the wide space in terms of this some of these forests. I can't begin to count some of these forests, but there are quite many, and the costs are called North Central, and also the other Northwest and states.
Terrorists have now been dislodged from the Northeast, and they are coming down. That is why you are seeing more of this thing happening in Kaduna State now.
With formations such as 1st Division Nigerian Army, Nigeria Defense Academy, Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Nigerian Air Force Base, Air Force Institute of Technology, Ground Training Command, the Army Training Depot, among others, residents wonder why this doesn't have a bearing on the fight against insurgency in Kaduna.
Where the problem, as far as I'm concerned, is the chain of command. There must be a change of system. There must be change of approach. Otherwise, it is one after the other will be finished.
The state government has been doing a little best, but it's not best enough. The recent attack on the train, the airport, is telling us that completely the security structure of the state has collapsed.
Government will continue to support security agencies. What is very important is the fact that security cannot be left in the hands of the military, police, and government alone. It's a two-way traffic. People need to come in, and that is why government is mobilizing communities.
Some experts are, however, advocating the use of technology, increased political will, and proper manning of the country's borders.
You have drones that can be in the air for 72 hours, surveilling the whole forest. You have technologies that can be put in those drones, like thermosignature. You have thermosignature that no matter any living thing that is warm-blooded in a forest with a thermosignature, you can determine what is there.
With technology solving many challenges facing the world, security surely is one aspect Nigerians would like to see added to a list of other sectors to witness a turnaround after its deployment, and will hopefully forestall such attacks on the bandits' next target. With budgetary allocations to security sector rising by over 100% since 2015, from less than 1 trillion naira to 2.41 trillion naira, and the recent approval by the U.S. government to sell $1 billion worth of equipment, hopefully some of it will be channeled to purchasing technological gadgets that will aid the prosecution of this war. Victor Matthias, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, Nigerian Bar Association in Yenagoa, Bayelsa State condemns the invasion of a sitting court, demands prosecution of culprits. That's in a moment. Join us again. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential aspirants continue to crisscross different locations seeking support ahead of 2023. Tinubu meets supporters in Lagos, Kwankwaso and Ayim in Abuja for consultation. Family of 35-year-old woman allegedly murdered in the struggle for inheritance in Ebonyi State demands justice. Our special focus tonight is on climate change impact on agriculture and how the farmers are adjusting to prevailing weather conditions. And Ukraine authorities count deaths following intense Russian shelling across the country. Condemnations are still trailing the invasion of the High Court 3 in Yenagoa, Bayelsa State. On Wednesday, April the 13th, about 50 hoodlums stormed the High Court while it was in session and attacked the judge and other people. Members of the Yenagoa and Sabama branch of the Nigerian Bar Association are calling on the police to bring all those behind the incident to book. So far, 2 people have been arraigned and remanded at the Okaka prison in Yenagoa.
The dust raised by the breach that occurred at the High Court in Bayelsa State on April 13 is far from settling as the Nigerian Bar Association, led by its chairman in Yenagoa, gather in condemnation over the attack of a judge and others by hoodlums. The group also extends a warning to those it describes as masterminds.
The Nigerian Bar Association in Yenagoa and Sabama branches do hereby unequivocally state that it will do all within its powers to ensure that the culprits or the suspects are brought to book.
Eyewitnesses recount the attack.
Immediately I lock the door, then I hand over the key to that person. The person that forced himself entered, he go back to open the door. He can't open since we have already locked the door. So he used the water. You people lock me inside. He used the water and stoned Oga. That is what I saw.
Meanwhile, 2 out of the 50 reported attackers have so far been arrested and arraigned. While the defense counsel to the defendants cautions against accusing the wrong people, the prosecutor has an opposing view.
What we're saying is that we should carry out thorough investigations and only go after the culprits. This brings to the fore again things like, ensuring that we have CCTV cameras in, public places.
The offense is a capital offense, punishable with death. And since the magistrate does not have jurisdiction to try the matter, hence we requested the court to remand them, and remand them for a period of 30 days.
As the police continues its hunt for others involved in the attack, the arraigned suspects have been remanded at the Okaka prison in Yenagoa.
In Ebonyi State, the family of Ms. Nnenaya Onu, who was allegedly murdered over a property dispute, is appealing to the federal government to ensure justice is served over the killing of their daughter. Channels Television visited the alleged crime scene where her sister, Juliet Obonaya, hinted that the sad fate befell their family because her only surviving siblings are female. Our correspondent, Bukola Samuel Wemimo, has the rest of the story.
The cry of a mother. 65-year-old Agnes Ono stands in front of her daughter's grave, calling on God to avenge Nennaya's death, which occurred on the 23rd of December, 2021. She was allegedly murdered at her family compound in Onitsha local government area of Ebonyi State. A visit by our crew to the crime scene shows traces left behind from the sad occurrence. Although her sister would not point accusing fingers, she suggests that the gruesome murder is the result of a dispute over family property.
Before his death, my father happened to be the first child of the family who's supposed to inherit the family compound. This is not their family compound. It is because of threat to life that made my father to leave the family compound up there to come and elect a building in this kind of environment. Just because he gave birth to girls. Though he also gave birth to boys, but the boys are not alive. From my mother's side, because they later compared him to get married to another woman who can give him a male child, which he later did. And they compelled him to leave the compound to go and elect a building somewhere and abandon us in this kind of a place. You can see how lonely this place is.
The State Human Rights Commission received a formal complaint about the tragic incident and at this press briefing provides clearer details.
The alleged threat implies that the above-mentioned persons allegedly vowed to kill Miss Onu Nennaya and her mother, Mrs. Agnes Onu Nwokori, before the burial of their father. That 3 days later, after the threat, Miss Onu Nennaya was brutally murdered and burnt.
Yes, investigation into that.
Spokesperson of the Ebonyi State Police Command provides assurance that investigations will be carried out to bring the perpetrators of the dastardly act to book.
The family were able to tell us that they were afraid. In fact, they were afraid of more killings, they were afraid of more death. It is very unfortunate that they don't know that offense of murder is a case against the state.
A member of the community insists that if the family is too afraid to pursue the case, the attackers will be fished out the traditional way.
It's a taboo in our place. We now come out, all the elders in the village, from beginning to the end. Every morning, without tasting anything, without slippers, we gather at the main road, the village square, do the prayer they used to do, and seal it, and be waiting for the result.
According to Igbo tradition, conflicts over property are prevalent, and even worse where the claimants to inheritance rights are female.
They were excluded because they were not, they are seen as people that belong to another family. People that belong to another family that were married out, and their rights will be part of their husbands. Wherever family they find themselves, that is where their rights belongs to.
But does the culture take into consideration other fallouts of the woman's sojourn, that her father could only give birth to female children, as is the case of Nennaya, that she could get married and still face contention over her husband's estate, and that ultimately, like the boy child, the girl child also has inalienable rights? But many more women are beginning to kick against this practice, considered by a lot of people as unfair to the female folk.
There's one ongoing, that is at High Court, Ubuta. It has to do with inheritance. The lady, Mrs. Linda, she's just an only child, a female, and the father passed on. Before she can come down from Lagos where she resides, they have already locked the compound.
The Supreme Court, in a landmark decision in Ukeje versus Ukeje in August 2020, upheld the right of a female child to inherit property of her father, thereby voiding the age-long custom in Igbo land which forbids a female child from inheriting her late father's estate. The cold-blooded murder of Nennaya Onu goes a long way to show how deeply entrenched the culture is, and it may require more than just a court document to reform mindsets that see female children as second-class citizens. Bukola Samuel Wemimo for Channels Television News.
To agriculture now. It's a sector in Nigeria which has been hurt by several shocks: sporadic flooding, Boko Haram insurgency, and conflicts between herdsmen and farmers. The Food and Agriculture Organization says about 14.4 million people, including 385,000 IDPs in 21 states and the FCT, are dealing with a food crisis till May, while about 19.4 million will face food insecurity between June and August this year. While insecurity, especially insurgency in the northeast, is identified as the main driver of food insecurity, climate change is said to heighten the situation. In this next report, our correspondent, Ayola Kazim, looks at the effect of climate change on the food systems in the country and some efforts to tackle it.
Nigerian smallholder farmers, mostly poor, but produce some 90% of the country's food on unirrigated plots solely dependent on rainfall. Their crops are vulnerable to ever more extreme or sudden twists in weather conditions. Farmers report the late onset of rains and dry spells, rises in temperatures, heavy downpours, and other unseasonable weather events. Nigeria is ranked as the 53rd most vulnerable country and the 6th least ready country in the world to adapt to climate change in the 2021 Notre Dame Global Adaptation Index.
People are forced to do seasonal farming because we do not have irrigation infrastructure. Yet, this is also a country where anytime it's the rainy season, we have unexplainable flooding. So it means that nature is blessing us with these resources, but because we are profligate, we don't know how to manage it, we are losing things.
Right now, the yield of one of the main crops planted in the country, tomato, is said to be lowered by 25% per hectare because of climate change, threatening livelihoods of about 200,000 farmers and an entire supply chain of enterprises they serve. It is projected to cost between 6 to 30% of Nigeria's GDP by 2050, translating to between $100 and $460 billion in losses.
When it comes to climate change,
Farmer Samson is one of many Nigerians working to change the trend to secure the country's food production. Without soil, it's growing tomatoes and other vegetables all year round, beating the weather challenges.
With soilless farming, you are not contributing. It actually has almost zero carbon footprint compared to traditional farming methods. So, for example, they'll say, okay, for you to do things that does not affect climate, no tilling, we are not tilling the soil. We are not doing runoff from chemicals. So then all of these cocoa peat, rice hull that we are using naturally would have been a waste somewhere, contributing more to climate change. But right now, we are using them on the farm, so we are turning waste to wealth. So if anything, we are mitigating against factors that would have even made climate change worse.
Samson knows his method as of now may not grow all crops, but he says it will help many get their necessary dietary requirements.
Anywhere civilization gets to, agriculture is pushed out. So this allows us to have beautiful farms that can work in mega cities, which is what we are trying to do. Now, in taking these farms to the mega cities, we are also able to grow things like our veggies closer to those who need it, so that those in soil can focus on plants that will take longer time and not worry about these short-term plants.
In its National Adaptation Plan framework, the government identifies the ecosystem-based adaptation approach to combat food insecurity, climate change, and ecosystem degradation in the country.
One of the basic areas in terms of ecosystem-based reference to agriculture is agroforestry, making sure that when you plant, you just don't go on monoculture. Monoculture system have destroyed the forest because we want to plant. Monoculture brings, some insects will just spring up because they are used as a plant. But if you use a kind of different mixed cropping, one will not be vulnerable to the other one. The vulnerability of one insect will not accommodate in another plant.
The latest report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns that yields of rice, maize and wheat are projected to fall by 10 to 25% per degree warming. But the IPCC also says transforming farming and livestock production can actually reduce emissions and slow down the collapse of the food system. Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
We'll have a public policy analysts discuss the issue of climate change and how it affects agriculture. But let's move on to other stories now. The Nigerian Erosion and Watershed Management Project, NEWMAP, has held a meeting to review its activities ahead of the closure of the 10-year program in Anambra State. Project execution impact on host communities, as well as the next line of action, are the focus of the review. The meeting, which is held in Awka, the Anambra State capital, had in attendance the Deputy Governor of the state, Dr. Onyeka Ibezim, NEWMAP Task Force team, World Bank representatives, amongst others.
The objective of the Nigerian Erosion and Watershed Management Project, NEWMAP, is to reduce the vulnerability to soil erosion in targeted sub-watersheds by scaling up successful gully restoration and watershed management activities in about 23 states in the country, and Anambra State is one of them. 10 years after, the program is winding down in Anambra State, and activities for a review of the program kicks off with a session on additional financing implementation. Anambra State is famous for erosion, so the program got an extension from the original timeline.
Success has been recorded. So the participant states actually requested the federal government to please provide additional funding for NEWMAP. So it was now extended to 2 years. So in total, NEWMAP has run for 10 years. And like a project, everything must come to a close. And the effective closing date is June 30th, 2022.
Representing Governor Chukwuma Soludo, the State Deputy Governor applauds the initiative, but also appeals for another phase to be activated.
Just before now, in the past, road drainages are not terminated well, and then the texture of the soil, and then globally, the climatic changes that cause flooding. So it's a threat, not just to Anambra, but to all of us in Nigeria. However, we are so happy when NEWMAP came with its intervention. Yes, you have done a lot, but it's just the tip of the iceberg.
The program continues at the International Convention Center, where representatives of all participating states gather for an interactive session.
And I must say that we are very impressed positively of the good results that the project has achieved. And now we look forward to getting more information from each of the states. That's why we're really very happy to have had this marketplace that has given us a chance to talk to all the different states and understand what the project has done in each of their territories and communities.
The event is rounded off with information from the World Bank stating that it's working on commencing a new program in the state tagged Agroclimatic Resilience in Semi-Arid Landscapes, targeted at saving and preserving the state's landscape and extending a hand of partnership to the Nigerian government.
Now let's look at climate change and how it affects agriculture. To discuss this, we're being joined live from our studios in the nation's capital, Abuja, by public policy analyst and environment activist, Dr. Abubakar Alkali. A pleasure having you with us.
It's my pleasure, Belinda. Thank you for having me.
Now, from the preceding report, that's the one you saw much earlier, one can see the efforts that farmers are making to improve their yield. But there's a big challenge of coping with the hazard that comes with the weather conditions. How can farmers surmount this to have maximum output?
Yeah, thank you again, Belinda. Actually, just like you have highlighted, it is a fact that one of the consequences or effects of climate change is food insecurity. And this is staring us in the face if urgent actions are not employed to help farmers, respond to this problem. Now, the need to look at this issue and also see how farmers can be supported is even more so when you consider the fact that most of our farming methods, our farmers in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa are actually agrarian. And most of these methods and the yields actually are dependent on rainfall. And there is a connect between rainfall and climate change. And climate change could actually affect these farming outputs, basically in two ways. You have the drought aspect, where climate change, high temperatures, high CO2 emissions can actually lead to less rain. And on the other hand, you could also have a situation where you have too much of it, like we are having in some parts of the world now, in South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal recently. That is why there is the need to look at how our farmers can respond to these climate changes. And what there is adaptation. There has to be some kind of adaptation of our farmers to respond to climate change and its adverse effects. One of the ways is looking at these crops, that are drought resistant, and also looking at these crops that are flood resistant. And when I say this, I'm not actually stopping at only crops. I'm also looking at livestock. As a matter of fact, climate change, global warming affects seafoods, fishing, livestock as much as it does for crop yields. So in a nutshell, we need to look at, the farmers actually need to look at some of these crops that are adaptable to this climate change, adverse weather conditions. Select these crops. And then there is also this aspect of where the authorities come in. We have the NIMET, we have the NISA, the Hydrological Agency and the Meteorological Agency. And the good thing is that we have these experts who can tell us what is going to happen tomorrow or the day after in terms of rainfall and all of that. So there is need for sensitization of these farmers on what the next day or the next year, the next farming season is going to be, and how they can select their crops, in response to those information provided by these experts.
But Dr. Alkali, let's look at a scenario now. Like one of the farmers that our correspondent Ayola Kazim interviewed in that report, Samson, who is turning waste to wealth, but is limited at this period. Do you think something like that can be explored on a wider basis for more crops?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You see, you have the technology. I think this is where the vacuum is. We really don't have this level of, technological advancement in Nigeria, and I would say in most parts of sub-Saharan Africa. But this is where to go. This is the future. Not only even in crop yields, you are even looking at energy, because climate change, global warming, energy insecurity, environmental sustainability, these are all realities of today. And the earlier the government looks at how it can deploy these technologies, there are lots of waste from our farms, from our farm produce that can actually be converted to wealth. But the issue, as I said, is the fact that the government, the technology rather is not there. So it is really critical that the authorities look at how these technologies can be, acquired, how they can be upgraded, and how we can expand that on a wider scale.
Thank you so much.
There is technology. We really need that technology.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Abubakar Al-Kadi, for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10. And have a happy Easter.
Thank you very much for having me.
A non-governmental organization, Precious Little Lives Initiatives, has reached out to the less privileged in the society. This time, the organization is giving out food items to wives of fallen military officers at the Mambila Barracks in Abuja.
Meeting the need of the less privileged is an important way of eliminating poverty in the society. It is in line with this that a non-governmental organization, Precious Little Lives Initiative, founded by the wife of the National Security Advisor, Mrs. Nafisat Monguno, takes it as a matter of responsibility to meet the needs of the less privileged in the society. This time, the foundation is giving out food items like rice, beans, corn millet, groundnut oil, and cash to widows of military officers at the Mambila Barracks.
The founder of the NGO formed the NGO in order to benefit anything, rather to impact or to make the life of the less privileged improved.
The special guest of honor is the wife of the Chief of Army Staff, Mrs. Salamatu Yahaya, and urges these widows to be positive and courageous, noting that the service of their spouses to the nation will not be in vain.
In these trying periods, we are with you. And also, please help us pray that these security challenges we are facing as a country, as a people, will come to an end by God's grace.
The beneficiaries are elated.
I have mixed feelings. One is that it's because I lost my husband. But the second part of it is that I am happy that somebody understands us, understands the feelings and what we are going through, and was able to come to tell us sorry and to do something for us.
This woman, she really makes us happy, over happiness. Because what our mother did to us, I don't think even my parents didn't do it to us. She make us to be happy today. Today, I even thinking what I'm going to cook. I didn't see it. As I come, I was very happy, jumping up and down. I can't even resist what she did to me. May Allah help her. May Allah protect her with her children, and God bless her.
The organization hopes to reach more people and communities with this gesture in the coming days.
Time to find out what's happening in the world of business. Laddie Williams has the details.
Thanks, Melinda. Well, in business news, British multinational bank and financial services company Standard Chartered says it plans to fully shut down its operations in 7 African and Middle Eastern countries. The affected countries include Cameroon, Angola, Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, Gambia, Jordan, and Lebanon. In a statement released on its website, the bank explains that the action, which is part of moves to improve on its profits, became necessary due to significantly low income it generates from these markets. In January this year, Standard Chartered announced that it was closing down at least half of its Nigerian branches to concentrate on digital banking. And Nigeria's FX reserves have sustained the accretion it recorded last week as it increased by $53.48 million to $39.71 billion as at April the 12th. That's according to latest data from the central bank. This comes after the country's external buffers saw its first accretion in 4 weeks amid fluctuation in the price of crude oil at the international market caused by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Meanwhile, latest report by an investment bank, FBN Quest, expects Nigeria's external reserve to grow to about $40 billion by the end of this year, following the latest Eurobond issuance of $1.25 billion in March. Well, our forex trading activity at the FMDQ exchange ended mixed this week before the Easter holiday. A breakdown of the trading results shows that the total turnover of transactions carried out at the FX spot, forwards and futures markets rose by 8.86% to $581.41 million as of April the 14th. At the same time, total value of transactions at the FX spot market rose by 16.22% to $500.44 million. The futures market recorded no activity, while the FX derivatives turnover fell by 21.76%. Meanwhile, the naira fell by 0.09% to 416 naira, 12 kobo against the dollar at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange window of the forex market, in contrast to 415 naira, 76 kobo recorded last week. And over to the equities market, which ended the second trading week of April in the green ahead of the Easter break, as the benchmark performance indicator went up nearly 2%. The total value of listed equities also increased by more than 473 billion naira, largely due to intense bargain hunting for bellwether stocks such as MTN Nigeria, Dangote Cement, as well as some equities across the 5 key counters of the NGX. Maya tops a list of 51 gainers with a 41.59% increase on its share price. Academy Press led 17 other losers, down by 18.64%, while the trio of GTCO, Zenith and Fidelity Bank were major contributors to the 1.24 billion total volume of shares traded this week. And at the unlisted securities market, activities at the NASD OTC exchange ended the second week of April in the green, as both the security index and the market capitalization recorded a 5.60% advance. At the same time, NASD investors gained 54.41 billion naira in value, which made the market capitalization to close at 1.03 billion naira this week, in contrast to 971.52 billion naira recorded on Friday last week. However, the total value of securities traded during the week declined by 33.11%, as the market recorded a total of 149.11 billion naira in value. Meanwhile, total volume of securities traded on the NASD exchange went up by 6.87% to 4.17 million units, while total transactions or deals surged 26.88%. All right, that's it on business news. It's back to Melinda with the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Ladi. On the international scene, Ukrainian authorities say at least one person has died following an overnight attack by Russian forces on the city of Lviv. Meanwhile, Russian air raids and missile strikes hit the Ukrainian capital and other major cities today, as Moscow launched more long-range attacks following the sinking of its Black Sea Fleet's flagship.
These attacks on parts of Ukraine intensified overnight on Friday into Saturday. Apart from Lviv and the country's capital, Kyiv, Ukrainian state emergency services say at least one person was killed and 18 wounded when a Russian missile hit one of the central districts of the northeastern Kharkiv region. The casualties were also confirmed by the regional governor in a statement on the Telegram messaging app. The missile hit a former factory in the area of Kornel Rainak at around 11 in the morning. Emergency services say the missile produced a fire of 1,500 square meters, partially damaging nearby buildings, including multi-story residential buildings. Meanwhile, civilians were caught under bombardment in the frontline town of Lysychansk today. Reporters on the ground say they saw civilians crouching to the ground and fleeing for safety from incoming rockets and shells in the frontline town of Lysychansk in the eastern Luhansk region. Emergency workers tried to put out a fire in a shopping area caused by the bombardment, but also set fire to a number of trucks. It was not immediately clear if there were any casualties. Ukraine says it expects Russian forces to renew the offensive in the southern Kherson region and warns of further missile strikes on defense and industrial facilities across the country. Spokesperson of the Ukrainian army said in an online briefing, due to the presence of Russian warships armed with sea-launched caliber cruise missile in the Black Sea, there is an increased threat of the occupants using missile weapons against the facilities of the defense and industrial complex and logistics infrastructure of our state. Russian warplanes bombed Lviv and its missiles struck Kiev early Saturday as Moscow followed through on the threat to launch more long-range attacks on Ukrainian cities after the sinking of its Black Sea Fleet flagship, the Moskva. According to the spokesperson, Russia's navy continues to block the port city of Mariupol where Ukrainian troops are still holding out in the ruins of the besieged coastal city, which has been the scene of the war's heaviest fighting and worst humanitarian catastrophe.
Before we find out what's happening in the world of sports, let's take one more local story. In Adamawa State is a sigh of relief for residents as the state government declares an end to its cholera outbreak. The disease had claimed about 55 lives within vulnerable communities since its outbreak in July 2021. Development partners such as the WHO, UNICEF, IRC have been working with the state government to bring it under control.
Since the cholera outbreak in July 2021, the Adamawa state government and development partners like the WHO, UNICEF, IRC and other organizations have taken measures in mitigating the spread of the disease. The partnership has given birth to this meeting of relevant stakeholders in the health sector under the auspices of the Adamawa State Ministry of Health. They are here to brief the media and the general public on the closure of the cholera outbreak in the state, announced in July 2021, which recorded about 1,900 affected persons and 55 deaths as a result.
With the support from the WHO and other partners, personnel were recruited, trained, and engaged. Commodities were supplied for cholera management and household water purification were also done. Though significant effort has been made by both government and partners, the public also has a responsibility to ensure personal hygiene, while the government is making effort in improving the wash sector. Since we have not recorded any case, despite heightened surveillance for cholera for several weeks, the government and partners are happy to declare the cholera outbreak over. Since the beginning of the outbreak, a total of 1,959 suspected cases with 55 deaths were recorded, and this gives a case fatality rate of 2.8%. However, this does not suggest a time to relax, but a window of opportunity to heighten our preparedness against cholera and other vaccine-preventable diseases.
The State Commissioner, however, laments the rate of open defecation as a major reason for the spread of the cholera epidemic.
In the area of open defecation as well, effort is also ongoing, but as you are all aware, behavioral change is a gradual process. And I'm also sure that as part of the, from what the Commissioner said, as part of the agenda of the Executive Governor, water and sanitation forms part of its development agenda.
With the state government's public notification of a total eradication of cholera in the state, Nigerians will be paying keen attention as many are hopeful that the disease can be eradicated nationwide.
Chris Elems is standing by to give us the latest in the world of sports.
Thank you, Melinda. Welcome to Sports News, and we'll begin with results from the Nigeria Professional Football League, where Shooting Stars were the biggest winners on March Day 23 with a 3-0 win over Lobby Stars. Emmanuel Loki scored a brace, netting his first 3 minutes into the game and doubled the lead in the 18th minute before Ayo Adejubu wrapped up the game within the 80th minute. With the win, 3SC are now 11th on the log on 30 points, while Lobby remains 18th with 23 points. Meanwhile, Kano Pillars' first home game in 2 years was marred by fans' trouble as the game was stopped in the 82nd minute against Katsina United, while the scoreline was still goalless. In other results, Dakada recorded a 2-1 win over Heartland, while Rangers and Sunshine played a goalless game. Remo Stars held Nasarawa to a 1-1 draw in Lafia, while the game between Abia Warriors versus Niger Tornadoes, as well as Wiki Tourist and Kwara United, also produced the same scoreline. Liverpool's quadruple hopes remain intact as they beat rivals Manchester City 3-2 to secure their spot in the FA Cup final. The Reds and City are neck and neck in the Premier League and could yet contest the Champions League final. Liverpool were 3-0 up by halftime thanks to Ibrahima Konatu's early header and a Sadio Mane's double. Jack Grealish pulled one back early in the second period, and Bernardo Silva's late tap-in forced a tense finish, but Liverpool held on for the win. In the English Premier League, Cristiano Ronaldo's 50th club career hat-trick earned Manchester United a 3-2 victory over Norwich City, and since a fans' protest at Old Trafford. With Tottenham Hotspur losing 1-0 at home to Brighton, United took advantage to close in on the Champions League qualification spot. The win, United's first in 4 games in all competitions, moved them above Arsenal, who lost 1-0 at Southampton, into 5th on 54 points, with Spurs now just 3 points in front. Before the match, thousands of United supporters staged a protest against the team's owners, demanding that the Glazer family get out of the club. That sports news is back to you, Melinda.
Tributes continue to pour in for late Afro highlife singer and instrumentalist Orlando Julius, the musician with almost 6 decades of active career on stage, who died at the age of 79. In a brief chat with Channels Television, Grammy nominee Seun Kuti describes his father's contemporary as an inspiration to many musicians. And the main news again. A busy weekend for some presidential aspirants like Tinubu, Kwankwaso and Ayim, who held consultations, and for supporters of Vice President Osinbajo is another opportunity to drum up support for him. Just in, Speaker of Bauchi State House of Assembly dumps APC for PDP. That's the news at 10 tonight. I'm Melinda Akinlami. On behalf of the team, have a happy Easter.